where best friends and next-door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready, and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian, and with me is Willow.
Hello.
Hello. Look, it's a lot.
Yeah.
We're continuing Notorious 90s.
We are.
Because, I'm sorry, I just think some of the most interesting true crime cases of all time came from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's the nostalgia speaking.
The
Could
90s
be.
is nostalgic. It really is.
Yeah. So for Patreon, I've said about a million things I'm going to cover and have done either half the research or all the research on. I finally picked. I'm going to cover Kurt Cobain.
Oh, good. I thought you
Yes.
did.
No, I said I was gonna.
You didn't cover Kurt Cobain
I
at the
did
very
not.
beginning?
No, I didn't. I said I was gonna, but then I didn't.
Okay.
Because I have a spicy take that no one likes.
I know you do.
Uh-huh. And no one likes it.
No.
And I don't care.
It's
Because
okay.
it's just, I like the truth.
Yeah.
That's what I find yummy. Is the truth. But yeah, if you want to hear my spicy take that no one asked for, it'll be on Patreon. I'm covering Kurt Cobain's death. Because it was just such a huge part of the 90s. I believe I was 14 when he passed away. And Nirvana was so huge. You just don't know unless you lived through it. But
Yeah.
it was a wild time. And so I want to cover that. So I'll be recording that either tomorrow or Saturday. So we'll have it up by the end of the week, barring unforeseen circumstances, because I'll say things like that and then life will just be like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna push you in front of traffic, fuck you. So I'm
about to play in traffic on purpose.
halfway there.
Mm-hmm.
I've just had enough. It's been a lot. Me and Willow have been going through a lot.
Yeah, we have.
And I haven't been present on Discord. I just can't.
I can't.
Me and Willow both have been so busy.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since my Facebook got bananated, I've had to do crazy stuff for work, and I have to work all the time. Pretty much.
Yep.
And Willow's single momming it and working all the time. So we're doing our best, y'all, though. Please know that. This is not like we're sick of the podcast or anything. It's just life is being mean.
Yeah.
And punching us repeatedly in the face. And we're tired. I think we're both going on just 2 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I don't feel good.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, let's get into this case. What are we covering today, Willow?
Today we're covering the assassination of Gianni Versace. Trigger warning for this episode is suicide, mental health issues. We don't really go too much into detail about that. Mention of AIDS, sex work, description of wounds. So not really a whole lot really to be warned about.
That's nice considering the previous months were nothing but the worst trigger warnings ever.
Right.
God.
Yeah, not all. I mean, there's a little bit of graphic, but not too much. So the 1997 assassination of Gianni Versace took the entire world of fashion, or shook the entire world of fashion to its core. Versace basically created the runway that we know today. Prior to his rise of fame, most fashion shows were visited predominantly by people in the industry, mostly designers and press, but Versace took it to the next level. He invited everyone. He had celebrities and movie stars sitting next to politicians and world leaders, models sitting next to editors, photojournalists sitting next to musicians. It ended up being a great time for everyone, and his shows became the next big event. It's exactly how the shows we think of today, basically, where all those celebrities go to be seen. And
Yes.
a lot of intermingling happens at these events because of Versace. A lot of people, have key moments in their line of work, getting new jobs, getting new gigs, a lot of stuff happens at these shows just by kind of mixing the social groups. And Gianni was really good at that. He was friends with literally everyone. So he could be like, oh, meet my friend so-and-so. And then magic just happened. Even Princess Diana was a huge fan of his. She had him redesign her entire wardrobe from, the super formal flattering, feminine, and flirty pieces. Courtney Love also had Gianni Versace design her wardrobe, taking her the opposite direction from her dirty and dingy, past looks to a very classy and sexy and more put together look that she kind of carries on today. Gianni had a way with fabric and knew his way around a woman's curves better than any designer around. He was somehow able to morph sex worker streetwear, bondage, togas, metal hardware, chainmail, goth, and baby doll dresses, and somehow make it couture. And this would go to take the world of fashion by storm. Gianni Versace was born in the ancient seaside city of Reggio, Calabria. I don't know where to put
I don't know.
I don't know where to put the emphasis on that one. I'm not Italian.
Nope.
But I did do a little bit of research on the city, and it is really, really fascinating place. He was born on December 2nd, 1946, making him a Sagittarius. He grew up with his older brother, Santo, and his younger sister, Donatella. He did have an older sister named Tina, but she sadly died at the age of 12 from a tetanus infection, which is just so sad. Raised by his father and his mother, who was a dressmaker who he greatly admired, with her influence, he began designing clothes at a very young age. Basically, as soon as he was able to hold a pair of scissors, he was making dresses. And he had a natural ability to see the art in apparel and the way that fabric drapes the body. He later told the New York Times, quote, "When you are born in such a place as Calabria and there's beauty all around you, a Roman bath, a Greek remain, you cannot help but be influenced by classical past." The name Reggio Calabria dates back to its Greek settlement in 730 BC, which, coming from a place like the oldest place that we live, I mean, aside from, the mountains and the rocks and trees themselves, like our town is 1880 and up. Like we have nothing that old. He's living in a place where he can still like touch things from almost 800 BC. That's insane to me.
That's really wild. Because like in America, you just don't realize that all of our stuff's only 200 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Approximately.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to like some ancient like indigenous people's sites.
Absolutely.
But even then, they're few and far between.
Right. And even then, we don't really know. The United States doesn't like to pay attention and glorify those places, sadly. But yeah, so this city, it was a Greek settlement, and still to this day it has the Greek statues and scripts like interwoven into this Italian city. The city had suffered terrible earthquakes in 1562 and 1783, while they were going through major political shifts, becoming both the part of the Kingdom of Naples as well as the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. The city's damages from those earthquakes were then repaired with modern styles of art. And then the repairs kind of went into like the late 1800s with Art Nouveau. So you see all these really beautiful influences of both, the Byzantine Empire, the Greeks, and with all the mosaics and the statues, and then you see the Art Nouveau and then the Gothic cathedrals. Like he just was in a place completely surrounded and saturated in beautiful architecture and beautiful art. So he just kind of like soaked it up like a sponge and really was able to use the beauty around him and manipulate that into clothing, and basically created his own art form based off of everything that he sees. And if you think about that and then you look at a lot of Versace's pieces, you're going to be able to see that. You're going to see the Gothic architecture mixed with the, Greco-Roman-esque, the draping,
sure.
All of that. It's fucking amazing. And I mean, and also like the Medusa head of the Versace logo, dates back to all of that too. He was a very quiet boy, always aware of his surroundings and really taking in, the beauty around him. Being gay wasn't really socially acceptable at this time, and the fact that such a young boy was so obsessed with women's clothing really made his teachers uncomfortable. He later told People magazine about how his 5th grade teacher caught him sketching Sophia Loren in evening wear, which is precious. He said, quote, "My professor called my mother and said, quote, 'Your son is a sex maniac.' My mother said, quote, 'Professor, my son is not a maniac. He just loves fashion and clothes.'" So I love that he had a good mama to stand up for him. After graduating high school, he went on to get his diploma or his draftsman's degree, which I didn't know what that was. It's basically like a bachelor's degree. I think you can also get a doctorate in it, but it's basically a degree for both like sketches for any type of design. You can get a draftsman's degree for architecture as well. Nowadays, it's mostly like computer sciences, but after that degree, he then started working with his mother in the dress shop, no longer as apprentice, but actual seamstress now. He worked for his mother's dress shop for 6 years, and then at the age of 26, he moved to Milan. And this is where everything really took off for him. He worked as a stylist for a few design firms, creating several successful clothing lines, and soon built up a reputation for himself enough to start his own line. In 1978, the House of Versace was born. He co-founded Versace with his brother Santo, who would take care of all the financial side of things. His sister Donatella was named the vice president, also working as another designer, as well as his main muse. And his first signature collection for women was featured in the Palazzo del Permanente Art Museum in Milan, followed by his first fashion show, and then his first boutique in Milan. So everything really just kind of happened for him all at once. And honestly, he was given, man, life really just handed him some blessings this year. 1978 was a really good year for him, because not only did he have his first line, his first show, but his first boutique was a huge hit. It happened to be situated in one of Milan's most sought-after shopping districts, Via de Spriga. He literally couldn't have asked for a better location. It's where people went for high-end shopping and high-end boutiques. And so people are already going looking for the best, and they just happen to find it right there. His aesthetic, though different, very different from what people were used to at this point in time, it spread like wildfire. Soon everyone wanted a Versace piece. He also began designing costumes for the operas, movie theaters, and theater shows, and ballet. In 1982, Gianni went to a ballet in Milan and met the love of his life, Antonio D'Amico. He was a model and a designer, and the two not only worked really well together because they would go on and do a lot of business together, but they were madly in love, and they took care of each other until Gianni's last breath. Antonio would go on to design Versace for Versace Sport and Istante. Not much is known about Antonio other than that he was Gianni's other half, and the two were absolutely inseparable from day one. They were so in love. And I will do my best not to cry at some point in this episode. In 1989, he released his first couture collection called Atelier Versace. It was very groundbreaking and absolutely revolutionary for the time. At the time, the idea of high class and modern excellence was modest and muted tones. As People magazine put it, quote, he was inspired by Hollywood, art, architecture, music, and the current culture, and he walked on a tightrope between vulgarity and chic, opulence and camp. He exploded on the scene with vivid colors, textures, and print, blending luxury and overt sexuality. He was quoted as saying, quote, "I don't believe in good taste," which I think is beautiful from a high-class designer.
I don't either. I believe in that costs too much money, and that's on sale.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah.
There was a saying around this time referring to his rival Giorgio Armani that said, "Armani dresses the wife, Versace dresses the mistress."
I can see that.
I think that's a sexy line no matter which way you spin it. I don't know why. But that was really the appeal, honestly. Women were tired of being this structured, presentable, cookie cutter type. Women wanted to feel sexy and fun and free and exciting and maybe a little dangerous. I don't know, we really wanted to spice it up at this point in time. In 1992, Gianni Versace moved to Miami, Florida. And at first, he was meant to just visit his sister. He was just there on vacation, a very quick trip. He was there to visit his sister, and then he was going to open up another boutique in Bal Harbour.
Isn't her name Donatella?
Mm-hmm.
And she's famous also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Just checking.
I said it a couple times.
I know, but it wasn't sticking in my head. Like, I always want to call her something else.
I always want to say Donatello, but it's Donatella.
No, it's like my brain just wants her to not have that name, and I don't know why. Have you ever run into that with people?
All the time.
Like, my brain assigns them a name, and I'm like,
Yep.
No, you fucking moron.
Yep. I do that a lot.
That's why I thought, I'm just going to say it out loud, so I can get it in my head forever.
There you go.
There we go.
While he was in South Beach, he reportedly asked his taxi driver to show him, quote, something fancy and fun. So the driver took him to 116 Ocean Drive, originally called the Villa Casarina. It was a Mediterranean-style mansion built in 1930 by one of the Rockefellers. The kneeling Aphrodite statue in the front caught Gianni's eye, and he instantly fell in love with the place. He purchased the home pretty much immediately on site for $2.95 million, as well as the lot next to it, the Hotel Rivere, for nearly $4 million. He spent over $32 million in renovations, added mosaics, an observatory, updated the fountains, dismantled an elevator, and, of course, added the Medusa head logo to the front. South Beach in the 90s was a little slice of gay paradise. Like, it really was just gay as all hell. It really was in the best way. And especially for someone who grew up, again, the 90s, I mean, being gay isn't like super, it's technically legal at this point, but gay marriage isn't. And, a lot of adults in the 90s remembered growing up being like arrested for being gay or scared to be arrested for being gay. So having a place that you can be openly who you are and be comfortable, I just feel like was extra celebrated at that point. And that's what South Beach was for Gianni. It was like he could not only be open, gay, and, hold hands with his lover on the street and not have to worry about it, but it's also a place that felt like a small town. Like, he didn't need his entourage. He didn't feel like he needed bodyguards. He felt like he could just be himself, and everybody treated him just like Gianni, not Mr. Versace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I can't imagine what it's like to be that well known,
Absolutely not.
I think it would just ruin your fucking life.
It would terrify me. I would be absolutely terrified to do anything. I'm already a scared little mouse just going into the grocery store and having to talk to somebody at the front counter. But ooh.
Like, here's the deal. I'm not scared, but I'm also easily overwhelmed. I'm not afraid, but oh my God, if too many people are talking at me, I just get really irritable and have to run off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why, that's really why he stayed in South Beach for so long. And he did go out and about to shows or whatever, but he was a homebody. He loved being at home, and he loved the peace and quiet, and he loved the beach, and it was just perfect for him. Now, by the 90s, everyone was obsessed with Versace, not only for his talent and his brilliance in design, but him as a person. Everyone really genuinely loved him because he was really cool. He was a really great guy. He was nothing like Hollywood had ever seen before. He was not only just friends with everyone. And when I say everyone, like Eric Clapton, Whitney Houston, Madonna, Tupac, Elizabeth Taylor, Grace Jones, Demi Moore, Calvin Klein, Michael Jackson, like anybody, you name it, they were friends with Versace. And when I say somebody's friends with him, like he got to know people. Like, he had like an intimate level of friendship with people. He cared, It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I know that guy. It was like, oh yeah, I had them over for dinner, Naomi Campbell, Kate Moss, and Cindy Crawford all walked in his runways, and they were kind of like not as well known. I mean, Cindy Crawford was, but he really just skyrocketed Naomi Campbell's career. And honestly, their friendship is one of the most beautiful out of all of them. They really did have a really beautiful friendship. They really cared about each other. And I don't know. I just feel like there's a level of safety with Gianni Versace because he didn't drink. He didn't party. Like, he went to events, but he never drank. He never did drugs. He never had any weird, like, issues with people that would later come back and bite him, like we're seeing now with a lot of elite. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I could just see how models would feel very safe and secure with him around, is what I'm saying, compared to all of the other people that they had to deal with in the scene. And it must have been incredible to be at these events with him.
I will say this because it's important to note, and I'm not trying to shit on the victim or anything, but he was not nice about body issues.
No, he wasn't. And I will get into a little bit about that.
Yes. Because so he was not necessarily safe for women in that way.
No, but he didn't harm them.
But he wasn't predatory.
No.
So I'm just going to make that distinction now before we continue on, because it is something that bothers me about this case.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll get into his like demeanor about that.
Because he was a real cunt about it, frankly. I'm not going to excuse it.
No. But, I mean, for the most part, he wasn't. It was just during certain times and, you know...
I'm not going to excuse shaming people's bodies ever for any reason.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that that's not, like, the main thing that he was about.
No, it was not the main thing that he was about, but he was shitty about it when asked, pretty much. Yeah.
But otherwise, he was a very caring man. He loved his friends. He was extremely compassionate and attentive. And he, like I said, he didn't really party very much. He basically went to the event, smiled, said hello to everyone. And then he was practically in bed by like 9:30 or 10 o'clock and ready to just meet the dawn with his lover and go for a walk and go to the beach the next day. He had a very calm and quiet life while also being a socialite, which I think is a very difficult juggle. His runway sets were always extremely over the top, huge set designs, the costumes, the hair, the makeup, everything was just absolutely extraordinary and groundbreaking every single time. In 1993, Gianni was diagnosed with a rare inner ear cancer, which he battled fiercely until just 6 months before his death, when he was declared cancer-free. Now, his friends and loved ones said that during chemo, he looked very sick. He got very frail. They really thought that they were going to lose him. A lot of people actually thought that he had AIDS. He didn't. But there for a while, a lot of people worldwide were scared that they were going to lose Gianni. And then he got better. And he was really happy. He was healthy. He was living life to his fullest at this point in time. By the time of his death, Gianni Versace owned 130 boutiques worldwide, giving him the net worth of over $807 million. Now there are almost 1,000 boutiques and licensed stores worldwide. He left 20% of the company to Donatella and made her the artistic director. Santo inherited 30% of the company and was named chairman. 50% of the company, as well as an extensive art collection, went to his 11-year-old niece, Donatella's daughter, Allegra, and her brother, Daniel. They would receive their share of funds when they turned 18. Antonio received a monthly pension of around $25 million a month for life and access to all of his properties, but sadly, he'd only see a fraction of that money after reaching an agreement with lawyers, and the properties were technically owned by the Versace company, not Gianni himself. So once the company transferred to Donatella ended up restricting him and his access. So poor fucking Antonio.
Yeah.
Poor Antonio. That Gianni loved him so much. He wanted to set his life up for him.
Yes, he
no
did.
matter what, you had it. It's yours. If it's mine, it's yours. It's ours. And it was just all fucking taken away from him.
Shit.
Now, it is kind of a stereotype that Italian families are big and like to quarrel, right? The Versace siblings were no different. In the last few years, Donatella and Gianni seemed to butt heads more and more and more. They fought constantly. They fought like cats and dogs. And which is why people think that he secretly changed the majority of the benefits to his niece and nephew in late of 1996. So just a few months before he passed away, he actually changed his will. And it was because of his fights with Donatella. His last runway show was showcasing his new haute couture collection at the Ritz in Paris just 9 days before his death. The show made history. Just like every other runway Gianni Versace show that he choreographed, this one broke the mold of all the others before him. Models were dripped in metallics with slicked back hair, dark black makeup, and nods to Gothic architecture. Very futuristic for the mid-90s, which we love to see. But Gianni and his sister Donatella fought like cats and dogs behind the scenes the entire time. Donatella was in charge with picking the models, and even though one of them was his absolute favorite, Naomi Campbell, there was most of the models that Donatella picked. Here's where we get into the body shaming issues, is because Donatella wanted to pick quote unquote heroin chic models. And Gianni Versace did not like this. He did not like that they were pale. No. He did not like that they were thin. He wanted them to, like, he even looked at one and was like, you need to go out in the sunlight. Like, why are you so pale? Go out into the sunlight. She's like, I'm English. And that was her first show to walk.
Yeah. And when I when I talk about body issues, I'm not just talking about issues against people of size, but thin people also.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the industry standard at the time.
It was. And
I'm not saying it was good. It wasn't. I think it caused literally everyone I know to have an eating disorder who was born in the 90s.
Absolutely, 1,000%. And those models were forced under like really excruciating dietary restrictions. Like almost like what's the movie with Dorothy and the Yellow Brick Road? Jesus Christ.
Wizard of Oz?
The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, she had to smoke like 80,000 cigarettes a day and was only allowed like, what, 2 crackers?
Yeah.
Some shit like that.
She was fat.
Yeah. That was like what, the 1940s? 50s?
Yeah.
Whatever. But, you know, like we had that extreme viewpoint on women's bodies back then, and yeah, that's where he's kind of like he got mad at Donatella, but in doing so was also showing anger towards the models themselves, which they did not deserve that. You know, they didn't, I mean, that girl was absolutely just blown away. It was model Karen Elson. It was, like I said, it was her very first runway show, and he was like, you need to go get sunlight. And Donatella had actually had it assigned that she was going to wear the like focal point piece of that show, which was, it was called the wedding dress. It was the signature piece. It was basically a metallic baby doll dress that had a veil to it. And at the very last minute, Gianni changed it so that way Naomi Campbell wore the dress instead. And it became like the grand reveal at the very end of the show, which Naomi Campbell is just gorgeous. So it turned out great. But yeah, I think that last show 9 days before his death was one of like the key turning points and the tension between him and his sister, because you can see afterwards and after his death, the way that she handled the company, you can see there's great remorse for her brother, but also that tension's still there. She's kind of like, nah, but fuck you, you know? Like,
yeah, I agree with you there.
It's so salty. I'm so glad I'm an only child. So his final day was July 15th, 1997. The day started like any other day. Gianni and Antonio woke up early. They had some coffee, did morning stretches, went to the beach. Antonio stayed soaking up the sun on the beach while Gianni walked down to the news cafe. It was one of his favorite local spots in South Beach. They had magazines and newspapers from all over the world, so that way he could keep up with what was going on back home and, across the world where friends live. On busy days, he'd usually send his assistant, but today, Gianni wanted to enjoy the walk. It wasn't very far from his home, and it was a beautiful day. He picked up Business Week, Vogue, Entertainment Weekly, People Magazine, and The New Yorker, and then he headed home. All was right in the world as he walked up to his mansion's gate. Just as he went to unlock it, he heard someone say something from behind him. He turned, and he was met with a gunshot that pierced the side of his face. As his face continued to turn, a second shot hit him point blank, and he fell to the ground, and the shooter ran. Gianni's friend and neighbor, Lazzaro Quintana, who Gianni affectionately called Lazzaretta, which I just think is cute. Anyway, he smirked at me. So Lazzaro was at the dining table with Antonio when they heard the two gunshots. Antonio ran to the window and just started screaming no. He saw Gianni on the ground in front of the gate, blood everywhere, and he just started screaming no. They ran outside together. Antonio collapsed on the ground, and he held his love in his arms, covered in his blood, sobbing and screaming and pleading with God. Lazzaro looked around. It was mid-morning. People were out and about. This was broad daylight. I mean, this is just after 9:30 in the morning. A woman stood nearly completely frozen in shock, unable to speak. She just lifted her hand and pointed, and Lazzaro took off running. He caught up with the shooter and followed him on foot. The shooter went down an alleyway, and as he rounded the corner, the shooter was stopped there with his head turned away so that he couldn't see his face and one arm outstretched with a gun pointed right at him. Lazzaro knew he'd be better help alive than dead right there in the street, so he pulled back. He had enough of a look at the man and could tell where he was headed so that he could report back to the police. He remembered seeing an officer as he was chasing the shooter, so he ran back to find him. He frantically told the officer that Mr. Versace had been shot at his mansion and the shooter went this way. The two ran in that direction together. They saw some men outside of a building and asked them if they had seen a man running, and they pointed them towards a nearby parking garage. Just as Lazzaro screamed, "He's in there, go get him!" the officer's radio went off, issuing a manhunt. It took a few minutes, but soon the entire parking garage was surrounded and secured, searched, but the shooter got away. At the scene, police thought that this could have possibly been some sort of mafia killing or hired hit because they found a dead turtle dove next to Gianni's body. The bird was taken into evidence where they later found that it had actually been accidentally hit by a bullet fragment when Gianni was shot. And that part just really breaks my heart because the symbolism.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
Because turtle doves mate forever.
Yeah, they do.
And Antonio never recovered from this.
Well, I wouldn't recover if Maris died. I get it.
He says every time he blinks, every time his eyelids close, he sees the love of his life in his arms.
It's so sad.
It's so fucking gut-wrenching. At the scene, they processed the parking lot and found a pile of clothes matching the description of the shooter, a gray t-shirt, black shorts, and a white hat, next to a red truck that had been reported stolen in New Jersey. Inside the truck was the man's wallet, ID, passport, and several other personal items. His name was Andrew Philip Cunanan. So this guy's on the run. And while this guy's on the run, basically the life of everyone involved in the house of Versace just kind of has to go to normal. Like this guy is on the run. Nobody knows where he is. Everybody's kind of like looking over their shoulders. They don't know who he's going to hit next. They don't know if somebody else in the Versace household is going to be hit next. but they still have a lot to do, you know, like they have to deal with contracts, agreements, they have to do with the will, they have to put together his funeral. None of this they were expecting. This literally shocked everyone. And I don't know, it was emotional chaos at this point. And I don't know, I just find it so eerie that they had the funeral before they caught the guy who did it. They did have the funeral in Milan. It took place July 22nd, 1997 in the Milan Cathedral, which is literally the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, hands down. Yeah, my God. Like, it is so beautiful. And like the entire funeral was just absolutely stunning. Everyone was dressed to the absolute nines in all black high class. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. 2,000 people were in attendance that day. Princess Diana sat next to Sting and Elton John, who actually sang a hymn together for the service. JFK Jr.'s wife, Carolyn Bassett Kennedy, was there, as well as Giorgio Armani, Madonna, Naomi Campbell seemed to have the hardest time at this service. I didn't know much about Versace when this happened. I mean, I was just a child. But seeing the news footage of Naomi Campbell just barreled over in pain and agony for the loss of her friend, she couldn't stand up. You know, like, it just, that broke me. I don't know why. I was such a small child, but like seeing her pain, that part of this story I can't unsee. She just was so broken.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah. I really do think that they had the closest friendship out of everyone. I really love that for them, but it was so hard for people to move on after this. You have to understand, Gianni, because he was so interconnected with all these people, like, people depended on him. Like, where was the future of, you know, their success without him? Like, it was really difficult. But luckily, they didn't have to wait long for the killer to be found. The very next day after the funeral, 8 days after the murder, on July 23rd, 1997, the caretakers of a houseboat in Miami called police to report someone had broken into a houseboat and they had heard a gunshot. Police rushed to the scene to find Andrew Cunanan dead, lying on a bed with a gun still in his hand. Andrew Cunanan had not just killed the head of the House of Versace. He'd been on a serial killing spree for the past few months, and it didn't take long for police to realize that he was actually on the FBI's most wanted list. Now, I forgot to write this down just because I saw it in passing the other day, but like the guy, the officer that was supposed to kind of update the system about, you know, who's on America's Most Wanted in that particular precinct happened to be on vacation.
Oh, okay. That's
so awesome. They didn't know at the time. They would have known had he been there, or I don't know, left 30 minutes later. This guy is insane. So Andrew was born in San Diego, California in 1969. His mother, Mary Ann, was Italian-American. His father, Modesto, was Filipino-American. He wasn't like most violent killers that we've discussed. His parents were strict, but never violent. They never yelled. It wasn't anything like that. He was actually the favored child. He was legitimately spoiled. He was the youngest of 4 children. He had older siblings, Christopher, Elena, and Regina. He took the biggest bedroom in the house while everyone else shared a room. He was the only sibling to have his own car. When he was in 3rd grade, he tested with an IQ score of 147, which fed his ego all the way through school. Everyone doted on him. Everyone thought that he was the next big thing. He was accepted into Bishop School, which is said to be one of the top college preparatory schools in the city. He went to the University of California, majoring in American history. His father, around this time, fled back to the Philippines when Andrew was 19 because he was wanted on some shady shit. His father basically had his own stock market business and was accused of embezzling over $100,000. And instead of facing that, he just ran back to the Philippines. He took every penny that the family had saved. He left without saying a word and sold the house before he left. So mother is left with 4 children and barely an income and no house. So she's stressed as all hell. She's scratching. I tried to say scrounging and scavenging. So that was fun.
Scavenging is
Scavenging.
Let's stop it.
So she, was doing her best to try to piece this fucking household back together after her husband just up and left. And it was just really tense in the household. Andrew ended up going to the Philippines to visit his dad for a little bit, thinking that his dad was this, big stock market, mogul type. He goes to visit his dad in the Philippines and realizes that his dad is not only dead broke, but living in what he calls squalor. So he headed back to the United States because that's just who Andrew is. He didn't give a shit about his dad. He gave a shit about what his dad could give to him and what his dad could offer him. That's all he cared about. He wanted things. He wanted attention. He didn't care about anything else. And so he's living with his mom. His mom's all stressed out. She's juggling several jobs. She's scraping by. Tensions rise in the household over Andrew's excessive partying at gay bars, which she just did not approve of. One night, the argument between them got so heated that Andrew threw his mother against the wall so hard he dislocated her shoulder.
Jesus.
Yeah, he's intense. He's really, really intense. I don't think he has anything diagnosed, but there's really some things wrong with this guy. Soon after, in 1989, Andrew dropped out of college and moved to the Castro district in San Francisco and immersed himself in the thriving gay scene there. While he was in college, he had which I guess if you do it right could be a job. I don't know. But he'd create all these different personas. Most of his friends knew him as Andrew De Silva, not Andrew Cunanan. He was a chameleon. Even his closest friends said that they couldn't keep up with his looks. He was constantly changing his hair, his style of dress, and with his mixed ethnicities, he could really play up or play down certain features with different looks and keep people guessing. Like, he could wear his hair one way, style it a certain way, and, he could really hinge on more of that Asian side of him. But if he styled his hair a different way, let his facial hair grow out and wore different clothes, he didn't look Asian at all. He was really able to transform himself. On his wanted poster, they had 5 or 6 different photos of him because he looked different all the time. He got addicted to the party scene. He needed more. He always wanted more. More drugs, more crazy sex, more money. He became a sex worker and got involved into some pretty violent adult films. And he was truly obsessed with this lifestyle, this very fast-paced, very seedy lifestyle. Many people think that he was just a crazed fan, jealous of Versace's wealth and success, which he was in part. But they did, in fact, meet at one point in time. Allegedly. A lot of people say they never met, but allegedly.
Yeah, I've heard this before. I was anxious to hear your take
Yeah, I believe it. I think that it was so insignificant that it didn't count as meeting. You know what I mean? You could meet somebody in passing. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. That doesn't really feel like actually meeting somebody. It's not something you're going to remember. No, Mr. Versace was asked to design costumes for an opera in San Francisco, which the gay community there was just so excited to welcome Versace to their scene, a scene that con man Andrew was trying to infiltrate. There were several large parties at some of the local gay bars in honor of Versace in the days leading up to the opera's opening night. At one of these events, allegedly, witnesses witnesses say that they saw Andrew and Gianni interact for a brief moment. Nobody has reported on what had happened or what was said, but I believe it was literally just, "Hi, Mr. Versace, my name is Andrew."
Then, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Goodbye.
you. Yes, that's it. And, he just kind of went on with the night. Well, later that night at another club, Andrew tried to get Gianni's attention again, but he was blocked off by the entourage. And this was, to Andrew, not acceptable. I don't think Gianni had any idea of what happened. I don't think Gianni even saw him or saw him try to get his attention. Absolutely not. And even if he did, it was probably so chaotic, like, "Oh, hi," and then walk away. Like, Jesus fuck. But when he came back home to San Diego, Andrew told all of his friends that he and Versace had had a beautiful weekend together. He told them all about how Versace had bought him all these things. They had dined, they had drank, they had this lavish weekend, the opera, the opulence, like everything. Like, he really talked it up. He basically made it sound like him and Versace himself had a romantic kind of getaway, which Gianni probably didn't even remember his name. Gianni probably didn't even remember meeting him. He had met so many people that night. Like, it was probably all a blur to him. But Andrew would hold this grudge for 7 years. And this little tiny interaction would be the final fate of Gianni Versace. And I just think that is so fucking tragic and bullshit. Like, I just think that's trash. I think that's absolute trash. Now, years of nightlife and attention-seeking, drug use and abuse, the sex work, all of this crazy living hard, living fast lifestyle. In December of 1995, Andrew met a Minneapolis architect named David Madison in San Francisco at a gay bar. David was handsome, he was young, he was intelligent. He had recently been accepted to both a law school and an architecture school. He seemed like the perfect person in every way, which he kind of was. He was a good guy. They ended up carrying on a long-distance conversation, but David ended up breaking up with him pretty quickly. As he told one of his friends, he, quote, sensed something shady about Andrew. But Andrew told his friends that David Madsen was the love of his life. So I don't know if maybe he just kind of came on too strong, or if maybe he asked for like money and kind of was shady about money, or who knows. But feelings weren't mutual there. He continued on taking on wealthy older men as lovers and having them pay his bills. One by one, they'd had enough with him and would end up leaving Andrew. After one particular breakup, Andrew realized without their money, he had absolutely nothing. He was an aging gay, an elder 27-year-old. He can't twink anymore. Like,
No,
that's...
your Twinkie days are over.
Yeah, you're retired.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't know what he was going to do. The drugs had taken a toll on his appearance. He had gained weight. He was getting wrinkles. Like, it
Just
was
aging like a normal
like
person.
a normal person,
Yeah.
but twinks aren't allowed to age, right? So it was really hitting him hard. He's very superficial. So he took this hard. And he also had this paranoia that he had AIDS, which in the autopsy, they found out that he didn't. So there's that. But he had this kind of a huge bout of depression, but just his mental stability just broke. Like, he just broke mentally. And by 1997, he'd gone into, full-blown rage. He maxed out his credit cards. His friend Jeffrey Trail said that he started doing meth again around this time. By April, he was juggling painkillers and alcohol. He told his friends that he was leaving to go to Minneapolis to take care of some business, quote unquote, with his friend Jeff Trail. Now, people knew Jeff Trail and Andrew Cunanan were friends, but most people didn't realize that just before his trip to go see him, they had had a huge falling out. It's unclear what had actually happened between them, but Jeff Trail told his sister that he really didn't want Andrew to come, a week prior stating, quote, "I made a lot of enemies this weekend. I've got to get out of here. They're going to kill me." On April 24th, Andrew went to a going away party with some friends in San Francisco and for once, he paid the tab. He has never paid the tab ever. And he very dramatically put his credit card down to pay for everyone's. This is weird. This is a red flag.
Yes.
I know that, paying the tab should not be a red flag, but in this instance, it is a scary red flag. It means he is delusional and broken. But so yeah, he laid his card down, and then the next day he went and got a credit card extension, paid for a plane ticket to Minneapolis, and then when he arrived, he met up with his ex, the love of his life, David Madsen, who also lives in Minneapolis, who is also friends with Jeff Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And together, Andrew and David went out to eat at a fancy restaurant. They went to a nightclub and then back to his apartment that night. The next day, April 26th, Andrew stayed at Jeff Trail's apartment while Jeff and his boyfriend, John, were out on vacation. On their way home the next day, April 27th, Jeff told John that he needed to have an important conversation with Andrew. But when they got back to the apartment, expecting to see Andrew was nowhere to be found. None of his belongings were there. It was like he was never there at all. And something with that just wasn't setting right with him. And just as Jeff was about to leave the apartment to go look for him, he called the apartment phone from David Madsen's apartment. Called Jeff Trail and said, "Hey, Jeff, I've got your gun. You want it? Come get it." So Jeff is just kind of annoyed. They're still friends. This is his friend. He's like, okay. So he goes over to, he left his house around 9:45 and goes to David's apartment. When he gets in there, Andrew instantly attacked him with a hammer, beating him to death right in front of David Madsen.
My God.
That's David Madsen's friend.
That'd be so scary.
Terrifying. What David Madsen witnessed, I cannot comprehend. I have no idea. Nobody knows. When David Madsen didn't show up to work on April 29th, his coworker got worried and went to his apartment and found the 28-year-old body of Jeff Trail rolled up in a rug placed behind the sofa. Jeff's watch had stopped at 9:55 p.m., just 10 minutes after he had left his apartment. Which, obviously leads authorities to believe that could possibly be around the time of his death. I don't know why people did that. When you had a watch on, a lot of killers would do that. They would turn your watch off after they killed you. I don't know. I think that's sinister. But investigators believe that Andrew kept David Madsen alive in the apartment with Jeff's body rolled up behind the couch for the next 2 days because eyewitnesses and neighbors spotted them both throughout that time. They were seen in the elevator on April 28th and then last seen walking David's dog earlier that morning on April 29th. At first, they treated David Madsen as a suspect as well as Andrew Cunanan, but his family insisted that he was being held hostage and against his will. On May 2nd, David and Andrew were reportedly seen together at a bar and driving David's Jeep. That following morning, May 3rd, David's remains were found by 2 boys fishing on the shores of Rush Lake, near Rush Lake, Minnesota. He was only 33 years old. Later that day, Andrew drove down to Chicago, Illinois, and killed a 72-year-old man named Lee Miglin, seemingly random. They believed that he saw him just as he was getting out of his car and overpowered him into his house. The poor man was found stuffed under his vehicle in his garage with his hands and feet bound, his head wrapped with duct tape. He had been stabbed over 20 times with a screwdriver. His throat had been slit with a hacksaw. Items were found. All the items that he had used on him were found in the family home, mostly in the family garage. So he literally used his own items to kill him with. They found David's Jeep abandoned just up the street, and Lee Miglin's 94 green Lexus had been stolen. Lee Miglin's family believes that this was completely random encounter, but the FBI think otherwise. They think that Lee Miglin and Andrew Cunanan had known each other. Now, if they were secretly hooking up, if, this was a sugar daddy baby situation, we don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. It is the type that he would seek out.
Yes. But
we have no evidence to say that. We have none whatsoever other than speculation off of his type of romantic partners. Lee Miglin was a prominent figure in his community. He was a real estate tycoon who was very known for his charitable donations. He was a loving husband, a loving father. And since there's no proof of a relationship between the two, I do not want to tarnish his name. But that's just what the FBI suspects.
Yeah.
His wife, Marilyn, was actually a pretty prominent businesswoman herself. She had her own beauty and cosmetic line, which was featured often on the Home Shopping Network. If you see her face, you'll remember her. Classic 90s Home Shopping Network. Like, that's what we fell asleep to, children. Like that. That's what put us to sleep. Those were our bedtime stories. Strangely enough, oh, sorry, I just read that. The Lexus that Andrew stole had a phone in it, which I didn't realize that in 1994 they were already putting phones. I guess they did in the late 80s. But yeah, it had a phone in it. And so they were able to track the car as he was driving through all these different states. Records showed activity on May 4th in Union County, Pennsylvania. May 8th, he was in Philadelphia. May 9th, he was in New Jersey. There in Pennsville, New Jersey, Andrew shot and killed a 45-year-old cemetery caretaker at Finns Point National Cemetery, a man by the name of William Bill Reese. Bill was a hardworking, kind-hearted man. He loved his wife. He loved his son. He was a family man through and through. Bill's son, Troy, said that he loved the Civil War reenactment so much that he was actually an extra in the 1993 film Gettysburg, which I just find that so precious.
So was my dad.
No, shut up.
Yes, it
was. Shut up.
Yes, it was.
I'm so sorry if you're listening on headphones.
Yeah, my dad was also in the film Glory, another Civil War era film.
That's hysterical.
Because my dad was a Civil War reenactor. I wonder if my dad knew like every Civil War reenactor in the world. That's so probably
hysterical. Well, I'm sorry to him though, because this man none of the people in this story deserve to die, but this man especially did not fucking deserve to die whatsoever. He was literally just at work.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is a very tragic death. When he wasn't home by dinner time that evening, his wife, Rebecca, started to get worried. She went to the cemetery to find his office door ajar and the radio inside was still playing, and he was not answering to his name being called. She just knew something was wrong. So she called police. They went inside and they found her husband's body. He had been shot point blank in the head with the same gun that killed Dave Madison. His red Chevy pickup truck was missing. They thought it was pretty evident why Andrew killed that man that day.
Just his fucking car.
To get that red truck to drive him down to South Beach, where he was going to park that red truck in the parking garage and leave all of his fucking identification inside. Like an idiot. Yeah. God damn. Andrew wanted to go out in style. He wanted to be known as, to become famous for killing the most famous man, basically. He actually, whenever he went down to South Beach, he ended up staying in a seedy motel, paying by the day, and waited for Mr. Versace to come home from Paris. Like, he didn't know that he was in Paris. So when he got there and realized that Versace wasn't home, he barely had any money to make the daily rental fees. And he just kind of had to, skate by and just wait. And then whenever Versace did come home, he stalked him for a few days. He watched his every move. He planned the perfect opportunity to catch him alone with his guard down in the one place that he knew that Versace was going to feel safe being alone. But unfortunately for him, the attention seeking got him nowhere. After Andrew's body was found in the houseboat, his family was contacted and his remains were sent to them in California, where he was buried in an unmarked grave in an undisclosed location in fear of harassment and vandalism. So essentially forgotten. And his victim, you know, the seat of all of his anger in this whole entire ordeal, that man got immortalized.
Yep.
So
I forgot his name too.
Exactly.
Until this case, you know.
Exactly. His face is uninteresting, unappealing, and unimportant.
Agreed.
But Versace lives on forever.
Yeah.
So he did nothing but ruin people's lives. He's just a vile human being.
Agreed.
Snotty little brat.
That too.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do business time because I already kind of did it earlier. Join our Patreon, join our Discord. All the links for that and the merch and our coffee and all that good stuff will be in the description box below.
I know y'all are buying merch. Y'all should send us some selfies.
Yeah, please do. You all are buying merch. I want to see you in it.
And it is my birthday month. I've been asked to create an Amazon wish list and I have forgotten. So I'm going to go home now.
Yeah, you need to do it now or I ain't putting it up there.
And start it. And I will give you the link that you can. Yeah.
Yes, but
I do it.
Happy birthday time.
I don't really think about presents a whole lot. So I don't know what I'll put on the list.
Enough of that. Of course you think about presents. Everyone think about presents.
I mean, I think about sushi and bills getting paid, but that's
anyway. We will see you all next time.
I love you.
Us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/Cruelty has all of the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.